New at 4, the day after President Biden's State of the Union speech, his cabinet secretaries spread out across the country to push the message.
The education secretary came to Nebraska today to see how one high school blends careers with the classroom. Our Brian Master reports.
At the end of the day, it's a people business, right? You have to love kids.
Education Secretary Miguel Cardona came to Bryan High School to see how it blends a classroom with potential careers in college.
I haven't held a turtle in one of my business.
Very careful.
From the tortoise and the hare in the Urban Agriculture Academy to its greenhouse, in many cases, students led the way. Secretary Cardona checked out the design and construction programs at Bryan High, as well as transportation and logistics. You don't often see a semi-driving simulator at school. Here, it's all about creating hands-on experiences and finding things that will translate to the outside world.
I chose to come to this school the day after listening to him because you do it right.
Bryan Jr. and seniors also shared their perspective on how what's happening in OPS could work in other districts.
The career pathways here at this school are more evolved than most of the schools I've seen. They understand here not only giving students experiences in pathways that connect to careers outside of high school, but pathways that give students real-world experiences that could be transferred from one career to another.
One student told the secretary that it comes down to two things: quality programs and quality teachers. In fact, the student mentioned one teacher by name. Before he left Omaha, the Secretary of Education wanted to meet that teacher, and he did. And that teacher, Mr. Allen, way to go. They talked for about a minute, and then he was back to work. After the visit to Bryan High, the Education Secretary then traveled to La Vista to talk about mental health when it comes to rural students. Coming up new live at 5, we'll hear from some students. We'll see you then. On your side in the newsroom, Brian Mastry, 6 News.